Hi guys, welcome to our build series on our shed-built supercar. This is a full space frame chassis with a fully bonded carbon floor and body. What we're doing is we're hiding a modern supercar performance and underpinnings under an old iconic Corvette body shell. If you would like to see our full project introduction, please go back to our last video. Today's video is on building a carbon fibre rear diffuser. Now we've got the actual carbon fibre body shell bonded to the chassis, our next step's to actually go through and build the diffuser, which is going to join the bottom very smooth aerodynamic floor pan to the back of the car. On the original Corvettes, obviously the hole underneath of the car is well, very traditional. So since we're building 3 of these cars, we obviously need a high quality mould to build the parts. But what we've chosen to do is do it a little bit back to front. What we're doing is we're building a very quick, what you'd probably call mould, to make a very high quality end product from, which is going to then be fully laminated to the back of the car. And then what we're going to do further down the track, once we've fed it and painted it really nicely, we will then take another mould from that car, but we'll roll the car upside down to do it. What we've decided to do is use a sheet of 10mm PVC foam, and the advantage of that is it's quite bendable, but it also holds its shape or a nice fair curve really well. So we've come up with a centre section design and cut it out of MDF, and then we've basically forced it up to the underneath of the car. So you can see there that we're finishing the outside shape and just working out exactly what we need to hold it to the bottom of the car while we start laminating. The next step from here, now we've got it fitting nicely to the underbody of the car, is we're going to make up a very accurate pattern and shape of the left-hand side and what's called copycat route. So we'll basically copy it and fit it to the other side, so we end up with both sides the same. What we're doing here is we've got this product, which is a Teflon-based stick-on product, which gives you a really good surface and really smooth surface that you can laminate over, which you don't need to do anything to. It's all ready to laminate. The surface finish that this Teflon gives us isn't as high quality as what you get from a perfectly polished gel coat mould, but we simply don't need that. The underbody of the car will be a rapted textured finish, so any really minor imperfections are just irrelevant. We've now got it fully stuck down to the foam, so there's no air bubbles or any air entrapment. The way we're going to lay the cloth in is we cut each individual layer to a staggered version of this, so it's a very accurate pattern. And then we're going to roll it up, roll the cloth up like this, and then it's got a centre line on it. We're going to lay it into the mould, lining up the centre line, and then we can literally unroll it. So it should be, the theory is, it should be a fairly easy part to laminate. We didn't show you guys actual laminating job, mainly because it's a full-on 2-person job. So what we're doing now is we are removing our temporary mould and all the parts around it, and what that's doing really is just exposing our finished diffuser. So that's it, straight off the mould. We still need to trim up and clean up the intersection between the diffuser itself and the body, and that will have, once it's cleaned up, one layer of carbon fibre tape, just taping it and laminating the outside laminates together. We're really, really pleased with how that's turned out. It's absolutely perfectly fair. So one of the things we've also done is we've built a whole carbon fibre inner boot structure, and it's got a big hatch in it, which is going to be a fully waterproof hatch. Now there's several reasons for that. One, we wanted the whole inside of the boot to be completely waterproof, but two, the actual transaxle, so we're running C6 transaxle, actually gets fed through the hole in the back of the car and mated up to the engine via the whole transmission tunnel. So we had to have access to get that in and out, and also for servicing. So one of the other jobs in the last week has been installing the carbon rear panels for behind the seat. So we've literally bonded the carbon part to the chassis itself. One of the jobs in the next week or two is to laminate up, or build a mould to laminate up some inner guard liners. Now, these cars don't normally have them, but there's a few reasons why we want to put them in. One is just to try and stop stones and debris getting thrown up by the tyres and actually hitting the underneath of the carbon. If the wheels throw up a fairly large stone, you can actually damage the paintwork or even crack the carbon. And whilst the carbon is really, really strong, we just don't want to risk a really, really expensive paint job. So what we're doing is we're building in the guards, and we don't want to really spend hours and hours trying to, 3D print something or 3D design something. So we've managed to get some inner guard liners off an E39 BMW, and they're not that far away from fitting. If you have a look in here. So what the plan is this car, the laminate in this car has got the same type of lip for the inner guard joining as what the BMW has. So what we're planning on doing is once we've made the part, we'll put a little bit of rubber on that edge, and that will literally sit up under that guard and seat itself into location. Well, the plan right now is to lower this body shell back onto the chassis, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the day and probably half of tomorrow mopping up the rear suspension and putting the inner guard in, and we'll do a time lapse of it, which we'll start right now. Okay, so that wheel's set up at ride height, the suspension obviously at right height, and so that shows us the gap and clearance we have under the guard. So what the plan is now is to make that inner guard to give us about 60 or 70 mil of clearance at the top, and that inner guard will then tuck into that lip on the outer body, the wheel arch. We do need to trim that wheel arch lip. That's as it came out of the mould, so it's going to end up about 15 mil thick, and it's about 30, 35 mil thick at the moment. So that also kind of shows for the first time the rear suspension mocked up in the car. Obviously none of the bolts are correct, but that shows the rocker and the BMW E39 M5 rear suspension. So the progress on the inner guard plugs, we're going to do a time-lapse video for you guys for the rest of the day. And what we've done is we've de-waxed these plastic parts and then given them an 80 grit sand so they can accept the filler, the carbog, which we're planning on using. And I'll take you around to this side. The process we're using is, once we've sanded this, we're filling these areas, all these low spots in the donor in a guard, and we'll sand it all and fair it all to the shape that we want to use. And one of the questions that's been asked to us is, why don't we use these as the mould? Well, we could if we were going to take one part from it, because I have a very high suspicion that when we removed the part from the mould, we'd destroy the mould itself, which means, you know, we can't use it. We're planning on taking at least 3 parts out of here. So it's worthwhile spending the time and effort on building a proper mould. The reason why I don't think we can use these is, I think as we pulled it out of, pulled the part out of this mould, we would just simply destroy this mould. And the reason is, if you look carefully here, the carbog, or the filler, it does stick to this plastic, but not very well. So if you look down here, you can see it's starting to lift off. And it will definitely survive taking the mould out of it. We'll simply destroy this once it's finished. But the good thing is we will actually have a really nice proper mould to take the rest of the parts from. We've finished the moulds, or the plugs, for the inner rear guards on the Corvette, and so what we've done is we've just literally used a whole 4-litre tin of carbog on each plug to shape it to the shape that's ideal for the Corvette, remembering that these were off the BMW E39, so they're now ready to have a polyester high build primer applied to them, which is what we're going to do now. So one of the little things that we've done is we've cut this corner out because the seat belt mounts there, and we need obviously space for that to sit in that area. We have checked though that we've got plenty of wheel clearance. These are the back wheels, so they don't rotate, and we're going to have about 2 inches or 50 mil of wheel clearance, so that's plenty. Okay, so we're putting the high build primer on this now. It's a polyester based primer. We just roll it on. I found from experience that there's absolutely nothing wrong with spraying it on, but the time it takes to set the gun up and clean the gun and go through all that process, it's just quicker to roll it on. The other major advantage, I actually think it does a better job for the first coat, not for the second and third coats, but for certainly the first. Now the reason is, we'll show you a little bit later when we start sanding, but it gives you a really textured finish, and the textured finish, I believe, isn't your enemy. It's a really good thing. It really helps with the sanding, finding all your highs and low spots. Not that we really care too much about lows and highs on this particular part. We've sanded these inner guard plugs right down to 600 grit, so they're very, very smooth, and they're almost certainly not going to stick anywhere. And we've put 4 coats of just old school Canuba wax on them. I don't totally trust the liquid wax when we've got sand throughs into polyester cardboard. We've had fairly substantial stick-ups because we think the modern liquid waxes react with the carbog. So we've used old school wax. The next stage now is to put a fairly heavy coat of a PVA release agent on them, which we spray it on and then we rag it on. Once that's fully cured, which will be this afternoon, we'll put a layer of tooling. It's a vinyl ester tooling gel coat, and we'll let it cure overnight. In the next video, we'll show you the whole mould building process from start to finish. In last week's video, we showed you the carbon door sitting in place, and we also showed you the hinges, but what we didn't show you was the door actually mocked up in place. Now, the way we go about fitting these doors or building them, is when we trim them, once we've taken the part out of the mould, we trim them so they basically touch the car itself, and we're not going to leave it like that. So when we open and close the door, they do hit the car, but that's simply done on purpose. And the reason why we do it is because every time we close it, it will then go back in the same place. If there's a 3mm gap around there, because the door's so flimsy, at this point, it won't necessarily seat in the same place. So that's the reason for that. So now we've got the door hinged, you can see it's bolted through these composite carbon panels that we've built. And that's the door opening to its full. We've got the owner of the car coming this morning, and what we wanted to do before he came was do a fairly substantial mock-up of what we're planning on building. What we've done is, this part of the car here is the original shape. However, what we've decided to do is modify this part so it'll look the same. It'll still have the chrome coming down the side here, but it turns a bit quicker and it's a bit wider to match the width of our gearbox tunnel. What our main ambition is with this panel here is have a seamless transition between the chrome work and the seat. One of my little pet hates on the original cars is that there's a very unfinished looking gap around the seats. So these seats will be in place and they won't slide back and forwards. They will be a squab effectively that is set in place, and the advantage of that is that it will fit the chrome nicely. It'll just tuck underneath the chrome and you won't see any gaps. Now the disadvantage of it is you can't adjust the seat, but there's two quite fundamental points in that, and one, that these cars are built for specific owners, and they are very, very unlikely to get driven by other people for any substantial time. However, what we've done to also counteract that is we put a very, very modern steering column and steering system in it. Now, it isn't going to look modern, it's going to look almost exactly like the original, and this obviously is not the steering wheel. But even though we're going to make it look the same as, or very similar to original, it will function very, very differently. So what will happen with this is it's fully adjustable, so it's got about 75mm of forward and backwards travel in it, and it's also got about 75mm of up and down. It's 3 inches basically of up and down travel. So the advantage of that is, instead of moving a seat back and forwards, we can move the steering wheel back and forwards, and it's done electrically, so it'll be simply done at a push of a button. Ergonomically, we've spent a lot of time thinking and planning, and so what we've got here is non-stretched arm access or hand access to this panel. It's going to sit slightly further up, and that's going to have our air conditioning vents on it. We're running 4 aircon vents, so 2 will be here and the other 2 will be directly under your feet. For 2 reasons. One, we get a whole lot of warm air down there if we want warm air, and also we get a whole lot of cool air down there if the exhaust is a little bit too close to the car. No, let's cut that bit out. In last week's video we talked about the major difference between this car and the chassis design and the chassis body design in comparison to the original. Now, what our number one priority was when we built this car was we needed to have a proper driving position and room. We were 100% determined not to lengthen the car through the doors or even lengthen the car at all. So this is what we've achieved. I'm just under 6 foot and I can sit in this car. My eyes are literally at the slightly lower part of the windscreen. We've got about 3 inches of seat bolstering at the moment, so we've got plenty of seat base, and I've got almost a modern car, bearing in mind we can move the steering wheel forward and backwards. It's basically in the mid position at the moment. I've got plenty of room to hold the steering wheel like a normal, proper, modern car would. I've also very close to the gear stick, so it's literally just here, and when I'm steering, this tunnel's not in the way at all, but it's also a very nice, easy and usable armrest. And you can even, what we're going to do is, changing the subject slightly, but this part of the car here is going to be painted as the body, as per the original car. The chrome's going to come down here as per original car and stop, and then this part of the tunnel, including the sides, are going to be leather, and then we're going to have a gated, and I know it's a slower shift, but we don't really care. We're going to have a stainless steel gated shifter there.